anybody that's watching or hearing us, today I'm speaking to Maiyo Febi. I've known Maiyo for a number of years. We work together, and Maiyo is a coach. She will introduce herself just now, but we are going to be speaking about effective communication in the workplace, and we'll break down this topic in the next moment. Welcome, Maiyo, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Really, I am, because communication is such an important tool that when you harness it, it just takes you to another level. So thanks for the invitation.
It's my pleasure. Can you please introduce yourself?
All right. So I began my career as a PR and communications specialist in corporate. I worked in corporate for many, many years, and there was always this calling, this longing that there's something more that I need to be doing. And I wasn't able to put my finger on it for many, many years. And then I realized that it's my passion to help people, to connect with people, and um, not advise them, but just guide them and ask them the right questions so that they can get to where they want to get. So the only thing that came to my mind at that time was psychology. I wanted to study psychology. And then my friend said, psychology, that's going to take you like 6 years, isn't it? Why don't you just do coaching? And that was the first time that I heard of the concept coaching. So when I did my research, I was like, this is exactly what I've been doing naturally all my life. So fast forward to today, I opened up two companies. So there's Native Works, which focuses on communication, organizational communication specifically, and also with a bit of focus on change management. What does change mean to an organization? How do you implement it, etc.? And then there's another one, which is my personal brand, which is Maiyo Febi. Now, as Maiyo Febi, I do facilitating. I'm a life coach and also a communications consultant in relations to Native Works. And I also do keynote addresses, which have a focus on becoming more of who you want to be as an individual, and also helping teams within organizations embrace what it is that the organization is trying to do. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell, I would say. But my absolute passion is coaching in different contexts. So whether it's coaching someone in communication or just general personal development or leadership coaching, that's where I thrive. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. So I think for our conversation today, I always say, let's break it down and go to the basics. And
Yeah.
if we're talking about communication or effective communication, what does that mean?
All right. So taking it back to the basics, I love that approach, because we often take it for granted that someone understands the basics. But if you don't have the basic building blocks of how communication works, then when you face challenges or you want to grow in it, you won't be sure about how and where to go about it. So in a very basic context, effective communication means that the way that you have communicated and what you have communicated is received by the person the way you intended for it to be received. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you'll find that a lot of people will be saying A, but the person on the other end will interpret it as C. So if that happens, effective communication hasn't taken place. Now, the basic areas of communication, to use a basic model of communication, every communication that we make, it always starts with a sender, and in the middle is the message, and at the end is the receiver. So what happens is, between the sender and the receiver, people get lost in translation in the message, depending on how the message was packaged, what platform was used to communicate, how the message was presented, etc. So within the message space, people get lost, so that by the time the message travels from A to Mr. B, something has gone wrong. So effective communication means that it's moved from one point to the next and it's understood the way the person meant for it to be understood.
Oh, okay. And you
Yeah.
hear a lot about, but that's not what I said. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
basically, it means it's been ineffective. Something hasn't gone right in there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And a lot of people misinterpret because of their context, because the context that we're in always affects how we receive communication. That's why you often hear people say it's very important to understand your audience. So if you don't understand your audience, the person that you're speaking to, then it makes it more likely that communication will go wrong. And I'll use an example of if you're working in a corporate organization, for instance, if you're communicating with a very senior person who wants deliverables from you and things must be done according to what you've discussed. Now, when you give feedback to this senior executive, if you're not addressing the things that he asked you to work on to deliver, then he's going to be a miss if you're not being clear and you're not to the point about what it is that you're giving feedback on. Because you'll find at times that a lot of people waffle when they communicate instead of just getting to the point and saying, as discussed last week, here's my feedback, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is where I'm struggling. This is what I need help with. This is what I'm delivering on. Bam. But now, if you're not saying it clearly, people are going to get lost simply because you haven't hit the nail on the head, so to speak.
Wow. But that seems like it's a skill on its own.
It is. It is. It really is. And what I know about communication, I learned it. And because I've been doing it for so many years, people think that, oh, you're just born that way. I'm not like that, you know. So I'm a straight talker. That's when I often hear people say, I'm a straight talker, and people must just take it or leave it, you know. And with that kind of approach, it makes people pull back from you, because if your intention is just to be a straight talker, to be direct and so on, if people are not understanding you, then what's the point? Do you know what I mean? So the more you work on packaging yourself and your communication in a way that makes sense to the person that you're talking to, the more effective you will become at communication. And I love using the example of if you're talking to a 2-year-old, it's completely different to how you would talk to an adult. Now, it doesn't mean that your message is necessarily changing, but you use different techniques, how you present your face to the person, how you use your hands, what words you choose to use. You do it in such a way that the 2-year-old will definitely understand, versus an adult. You make sure that they understand.
Wow. So I've experienced a lot of not a lot, but I've had a few of my clients, mainly Black females, that have said to me, you know, in corporate, I've been told that I speak aggressively and that hinders my growth. Like the way I say things for some reason doesn't seem to land with the people that I deal with. What do you say to the person? How do they get to a point where they can get their communication? I don't want to say right, because I'm not sure if right is the right adjective. Like, how do they get it in a way that is understandable to the other person without being seen to be aggressive?
Well, I want to start off by saying that there are people who communicate aggressively, first up. So it's not like it doesn't exist. There are people who are very aggressive and people who do need to work on their communication skills. And then there are also people who, like you've mentioned, that just don't know how to go about making their message land. So the first thing I would recommend is do some serious introspection on yourself. Think about how you communicate. Listen to the words that you say, as opposed to just communicating and wanting the person to hear you. The next time you're sharing something with someone, observe yourself. And that's a wonderful ability that we have as human beings, being able to sit back and observe ourselves. And the second thing I would look at is, what's the voice that's constantly playing in your head as you go about your day-to-day life? Because that voice will always influence how you show up in the world. And the third thing I would recommend is to assess how authentic you're being when you're communicating. Because with women especially, well, not just with women, but let me say generally speaking, I've observed people that almost create a character that's not them when they're communicating. So because it's a character and they think that this is how I ought to present myself in corporate, people don't connect when somebody's not being authentic. So the more authentic that you can be is the more likely that your message is to land. So instead of using words that you wouldn't ordinarily use simply because you want to sound clever, people will look at you and be like, what did she actually just say? You know, it doesn't sound like she understands what she's saying herself. And when you do that introspection that I mentioned, the first point, when you do that introspection, it's also a good idea to ask people around you how you come across.
Okay.
And when I started out in communication, it was always my children. I would always say to them, but how does mommy sound when she talks? Like, you've seen me interact in a workspace, you've seen me with my friends, with my family. How do I actually come across? And you'll be surprised the constructive feedback that people you trust will be able to give you, because the way you experience yourself is not exactly the same way that other people experience you. And one thing about me, just to use a silly example, when I started asking people, how do I come across? I got told that your face is scary. It looks very intimidating. So I learned to soften it up and smile more often, because in my mind, I'm fine. Like when I'm sitting there like this in a meeting, I'm perfectly fine. I'm having the time of my life. I'm planning my evening. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say when they ask me this question. But to other people, they're like, yo, that woman is scary. So it doesn't necessarily mean change who you are, right? It just means create awareness for yourself, about yourself, so that those little things that you know, oh, actually, I can smile a little bit more, and then work on them and be open to criticism. Because if you're not open, you're going to think, people are just jealous of me. You know, I know that I talk properly, but you'll be amazed at the little things that people will mention. So that's how I would recommend that someone approach it. And just to expand on the voice in the head that I mentioned earlier. So we all have that voice. For some of us, the voice is always saying, I am strong, I am strong. For some of us, I can't do this, I'm useless. Other people are better than me. Other people are better than me. Now, when you speak with whatever voice that is playing in your head, it's going to be a reflection of who you are in many, many instances. So be in tune with what your energy about yourself is saying to you, and then change it if it's not working for you. If you're walking around thinking, nobody understands me, all these people hate me, nobody understands me, everybody hates me, then guess what? When you communicate, that's the energy that you're giving off. And people be like, oh, you know what? There's just something about her, you know? And I know that it's not a scientific academic approach, but I truly believe that we all work with energy on some level. So you need to make sure that your energy is centered in the right place, so that when you open your mouth, then you know that you're speaking from a grounded place, and you're speaking with authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I can relate to that thing of asking people, because my kids always say I'm shouting. I'm like, but I'm not.
Is it?
I'll be saying something to somebody, and they look at me and like, but mommy, why are you shouting? And I'm like, but I wasn't shouting.
Yeah.
So
Feedback
now,
really helps.
no, now I've learned to hear what the other person is saying. And I'm conscious of going, I'm not shouting at you, I'm just asking, you know? And I get the sense that feedback for me has been quite helpful. But I think my question to you, Maiyo, is the way you communicate in your personal space and when you communicate in a workspace, does it have to be different? It's still you, but do you have to in the workplace be communicating differently to how you would normally communicate anywhere else? What do you think around that?
So my answer is yes, and my answer is no. And I say yes because you need to be true to yourself. If there's one thing that I always share wherever I go, in whatever context I'm in, is be your authentic self. Nothing sells like being authentic, because when you're authentic, you're more confident. And again, nothing sells like confidence. So if you're pretending to be somebody that you're not, it's not going to work. And I say no because the way you talk to your friend is not the same way that you talk to your manager. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And the difference that you make is within the packaging. So at the center, it's you. Picture a box with a present inside, right? You can put a black wrapping paper on it. You can put blue. You can put pink, something shiny, sparkly, depending on who it is that you're presenting the gift to. But inside, it's the same gift. So in a work context, there always has to be that professionalism, that formality, that directness, that clearness about what it is that you're trying to say. Because with your friend, you can communicate with your friend and your family in a way that's more emotional, I suppose, if that's the word I can use, in a way that's more emotional, more general, neither here nor there, just sharing your thoughts, no structure. You can jump around in the conversation. And I know women do that a lot, where when you meet your friend, you can easily have 5 conversations going at the same time. So you can say to your friend, hey, how was it yesterday when you got home? No, it was fine. You know, I found my husband sleeping, but guess what? There's this thing that I heard on the radio. Yo, we need to go to that event next week. So when I found my husband sleeping, you know, he then asked me for some water. But then when he asked me for that water, it reminded me of that drink. Remember that drink we had the other day? Yeah. And then you jump around these and you can clearly follow each other as besties, you know. Whereas in a work context, that will not fly. You have to focus on what it is that you're talking about, the project, the deliverable, the timelines, etc. What needs to be done? What are the risks, and so on. So in that sense, it's different in terms of how you package it and how you structure it. But at the end of it, you must always be your authentic self. So if you're a person that likes a bit of humor, throw it in the workspace. I mean, who doesn't want a bit of humor at work? If you're the type of person that's friendly, be friendly with people, but of course, keep it within limits. I mean, people don't want to know each and everything that's happening in your life, and the challenges, or what your child did last night, etc., etc. So you play it by ear, depending on who you're talking to and what it is that you're comfortable with revealing to each other. So it depends on the context at work, but primarily I would say keep the communication at work much more focused than what you would in a personal space.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned something about being confident, and the fact that when you're confident, then the way you communicate also is a bit different, you know?
Yeah.
But what do you say to somebody who's not that confident, or to somebody who's got maybe a low self-esteem, and they battle to actually really put their voice out there? Like, so what advice do you give to somebody like that?
Okay, so I'm a very deep person, and I always like to get to the root of a problem. So I could easily say to you, no, work on your confidence, be prepared to speak, even when you're afraid, just speak. I could focus on the technique, but that's not sustainable because then you're always thinking of what do I do next? What do I do next? Okay, did I say that right? I should have said it like this. They said I must raise my voice or whatever. But what I prefer to do is to put on my coach hat, first of all, and ask a powerful question, which is, when did you first realize that you're not confident? When did you first realize that you have low self-esteem? Now, with a question like that, it helps you get to the root of it so that you can undo whatever it was that made you believe that you're not confident. And for some of us, it could be something we experienced in our childhood. Maybe in our home, we grew up with our parents saying, shut up, shut up, shut up, stop making noise, shut up, shut up, shut up. So you took that into your adult life where you shut up, shut up, shut up. When you're amongst senior executives, you shut up, shut up, shut up. When you're with management, you shut up, shut up, shut up. So
Yeah.
when you can go back and work on that, then it becomes more sustainable for you in terms of working on your confidence. And to come back now to more of the practical tips about how to build your confidence, it begins with checking what the voice playing in your head is saying to you, going back to what I said earlier. So what is it that's stopping you from speaking? What are you afraid of when you open your mouth? What do you think will happen to you? And for some people, it could be something like, oh, I don't want my boss to feel insecure if I talk too much. But what made you think that your boss will feel insecure? Or some people are just not confident in what they have to say. They think, well, I'm not clever enough. What kind of contribution could I possibly make in this meeting? It's best I shut up. So it's important to get to the root of it. And then you'll see that the other things will automatically fall in place, where once you've addressed it, you'll feel yourself having more confidence. And one of the challenges that a person will come across when they start being more confident is they'll feel fear. Because when you start changing your behavior, fear is automatic. It doesn't matter how much you believe in what you're going to do, you will face fear because now you're undergoing a change. And in coaching, we call that the wall of terror. So you will hit this wall of terror and you'll think, oh my gosh, I spoke in that meeting. I shouldn't have. The way my manager looked at me, I know something, I said something wrong. And then you overthink it and then you go back to your previous behavior. So when you face that fear, it's very important to move past it, to keep on speaking, to keep on pressing forward in your confidence levels and not to allow the fear to keep you bound. Because most of the time in life, we create our own prisons. We like to think that they don't give me space, they don't listen to me, they don't like it when I talk. But in the meantime, these are all concepts that you've created in your head if you critically look at them. So we need to give ourselves permission to come out of our shell and experience it, as opposed to saying, if I speak, nobody will like me. Speak. And then if they don't like you, you can say, it's because I spoke. I can see now they don't like me. But we make a lot of assumptions about how it could play out. And in the process, we end up doing nothing. We end up sitting back and saying, this company, doesn't matter what I'm going to say, I know nobody will listen to me. So just go out there and see and give it a shot. And then whatever comes out of that, at least you have something to work with. And you say, okay, if I speak like this, this is what happens. And then you can work with that, refine it, and then move forward with it.
Wow. Because, yeah, and I think what you're saying is very important, because a lot of people say, I'd rather not speak because they don't listen to me. But you haven't tried. You haven't spoken and somebody has not listened to you. But maybe you have spoken and they didn't listen to you. It happens to the best of us. Where somebody then picks up the same point you were making, but they are heard more than you were heard. But you literally have to keep showing up, and you have to keep having your voice in the room, because when you don't have the voice in the room, then what's the point? You might as well not be in meetings, right?
Exactly. And especially now in the digital space that we're in with virtual meetings, if you don't speak up, if you don't raise your hand on in the virtual meeting, people will even forget that you're there. They'll just see a blank screen if your camera is not on. And they'll be like, oh, okay, well, Mayo's not there. And later on, they'll be like, oh, but Mayo was in that meeting and she said nothing. Ish, I wonder what she thought. So we have to have the courage to show up. And at times, like you say, definitely, it's not each and every time that you speak that people will listen and agree with you, but it's about having that consistency and saying, I'm here and this is my voice, because that in itself is powerful. So if there's somebody listening to this, watching this, thinking, I need to start speaking, but I don't know how, there isn't a perfect time that's going to come that will say, okay, now you can go for it. You have to start now, wherever you are, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. And it's also a good idea to get a mentor, if you can, within your organization, or an accountability partner, somebody you're exposed to regularly who sees how you communicate, so that they can give you feedback and say, okay, you've improved in this area, but perhaps consider looking at this in terms of how you show up. And when you make mistakes, it's fine. It's part of the journey. All experts that you see on TV or in your workplace, they started somewhere. They made mistakes. They said things that they perhaps shouldn't have said. But the beautiful thing is we get to learn from our mistakes. We get to become better, but we shouldn't be afraid of making them. We shouldn't build a shrine when we make a mistake and think, oh, this is it. This is the end. I'm going to stay here. We have to just keep picking ourselves up and going forward.
Yeah. And I remember when I started in corporate, we were taught we needed to be assertive.
Yeah.
Does that still work? Does that word still exist? It was like, don't be aggressive, you must be assertive. And I just remember those words in my head a lot.
Yeah. And how did that work out for you when you heard that? What did you do?
I think we always battled with, what does assertiveness actually mean? Because I think how it got defined, it used to be different depending who you were speaking to. It was clear what being aggressive meant, you know, but the assertiveness component was always not very clear. It all depended who you were speaking to at that point in time. Yeah.
Okay.
What's your take on that?
When I hear the word assertive and I look at my journey, I think my versions of assertive have changed over time, because when I also started in my career, assertive meant something quite different to what I believe it is now. Because when somebody says be assertive and you're young and you're new, you want to be hard and, you want to show up like, don't mess with me, I'm assertive. Whereas now, assertive means stand your ground. Wherever you are, stand for your values. Like, don't be easily swayed by things and by people, but be assertive. And it's less about being a bully, because I think I used to be a bully many, many years ago, where I wanted to show that, Mayo's here. But as time went on, I realized that, okay, that's not me. That's a character that I've created for myself. So as being assertive is very important in context of standing your ground and making it clear who you are and what you stand for within the organization, within the meeting, within the conversation that you're having. People mustn't be thinking, but who is this person? What does she really want? Because you find some people struggle to clearly articulate what it is that they want. So they'll sit in a meeting, everyone will be talking, and they'll want a specific outcome of that meeting, but they'll put nothing on the table. So people be like, okay, but why was she actually there in the meeting? So assertive means to me standing standing for what it is that you are. That's the best way that I can define it.
But how do you make that practical, as you say, for somebody who's coming out of university, starting off and thinking they're the it with their masters and honors coming into the corporate space? Because you know how corporate is. You walk in there, it's like you're still new. Like, who are you to tell us how to do things differently?
Yeah.
You know, so what does that assertive look like for that graduate who's walking in?
Okay, so it looks like, first of all, clearly understanding what your role is. Like, why have you been appointed in the organization? What are you there to do? And when that's clear to you, in all the conversations that you have, you always draw back to, okay, but my role in this is to do this. And to stand on that, okay, I'm here to be the marketing manager. And marketing manager means that everybody must be true to our brand values so that we communicate it to our audiences. And if people are not being true to that, what can you do as the brand marketing manager? Because you have to take ownership of your space. I think that's also very an important aspect of being assertive, to know people that this is what I am responsible for, and this is what I am here to achieve. So on a day-to-day practical level, that means that you simply stand for what it is that you're there for. Because if you're going to allow people to dictate to you about how you ought to do your job, that's also very common in corporate, by the way, where people think you don't know what you're doing and they want to tell you how to do it. You need to be able to stand and say, no, that's not what we're doing. These are our objectives for this period. And as the person in this role, this is the best way that we are going to approach it. Not to just be constantly swayed by what people are telling you. Yeah, so if you're grounded in your role and you know what you stand for, then it's much, much easier for you to be assertive. But if you don't really know why you're there, and if this one says this, then you're like, oh, okay, no, they know better. Or your manager says to you, but what you're doing is wrong. And then you just say, oh, okay, he knows better. And you don't stand for anything, then there's no way that you can be assertive. Because I think one of the reasons people are not assertive is because they feel inferior. And not inferior as in I'm nothing, but I'm junior. So what do I know? So I can't come out too strongly and take ownership of things because I'm just a junior person. But then we forget that you're hired to take ownership of that space. So even if it means professionally and what's the word I'm looking for? Even if it means professionally disagreeing with people that are senior to you, then do that. Because at the end of the day, they'll respect you. They'll be like, wow, we hired the right person. We didn't think of it that way. As opposed to just going with whatever direction that the wind is blowing in, because you just want to be safe and you don't want to draw attention to yourself.
Yeah. No, I think that's very good, because I think when you're new in corporate, you sometimes don't want to question things, and you don't want to be seen as this one who thinks they know it better because they're questioning. But your questioning most of the time actually helps with the learning. It helps with you understanding, and it also helps with you giving a different perspective into the environment that you've been brought into. I think this has been a very interesting conversation. If there's one thing that somebody must take out of this conversation, what is that?
Authenticity all the way. Like, be authentic. Don't be afraid to be you, because there's nobody that can be like you. And I've used the word authentic quite a few times because people are just so afraid of being themselves. And it sounds natural and normal to be yourself, but so many people are struggling, and especially women. Women are always being told what to be, how to be. And in the process, we get lost trying to be something that we're not. And by doing that, we're denying our voice, and we're denying ourselves growth. because how can you grow if you're trying to be somebody else? Because what is it that you're growing into if it's not even you? Whereas when it's yourself, you can make your mistakes, you can learn, you can expand, get new knowledge, and just continue to grow. So the key thing is be authentic, and in that authenticity, learn how to package yourself. In terms of the gift box that I referred to at the beginning, early on in the conversation, and that on the inside, it'll always be you, but on the outside, dress it up in a way that resonates with people, in a way that people can understand, so that you get your message across.
Thank you. Thank you, Maiyo, for taking the time. I think this has been a very useful conversation. So for anybody who's listening or hearing us, please continue to follow us, subscribe, like, comment. We love comments because we know you're engaging with the conversations that we're having. And Maiyo, I really appreciate that you took the time to be with me today. And I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad we got together, and I really hope that somebody who's listening out there will really just take that first step to become more effective at communication, because absolutely anyone can learn. It all depends on how open you are to the process. There's no such thing as I was born this way or I could never be like that. You can do it. You just have to believe, take that first step, link up with people that will support you. And in a year's time, you'll look back and you'll think, wow, I've grown so much, simply because you took that first step. Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much.